Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marnie Steinberg, and I'm the founder of iGen Parenting. I want to thank you for being here for our session today. Our speaker will be Ashley Southard, Site Director and Clinical Therapist at a New Beginning Outpatient Treatment Center in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Great. Thank you so much, Marnie. And before we jump in, I just want to say thank you to you for doing such a great job bringing this together in such a short period of time. I think this is one of the beautiful things that comes out of the rubble of a crisis like this is we see just the beauty and humanity of people coming together, lifting each other up, and finding our way together in all of this. And you've just done a great job. You're a great model for that. So thank you so much. And I am, as you mentioned, I'm a therapist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work at a New Beginning, where we specialize in the treatment of a wide range of mental health issues. We're really known for our treatment of eating disorders and trauma, but certainly treat depression, anxiety, and relationship issues. I work a lot with couples and families. So I'm thrilled to be here today, just supporting all of you, all of us as parents as we navigate this very strange time. There's truly no manual for this. So we're going to work together and talk about some ways that we can help our children through this. I do want to put a little disclaimer out there as a mental health professional that this is an educational presentation, so it's not meant to be therapy or be a replacement for therapy. Certainly, if you or your family would like some professional support, we'll be talking at the end about some resources to help you find that. Okay, so let's jump in. We have a lot of material to cover in a relatively short period of time, and I want to give you guys as much information as possible. So we're talking about how to care for our family's mental health, how to help our children through this time, because I think we're all trying to just do the best that we can and help our kiddos through it, and how great that all of you are here and really prioritizing your children's needs through this time. So I want to first just kind of set the stage as we look at this COVID-19 crisis through our children's eyes and really appreciate and respect what they're going through. I think we can all appreciate how hard this is for us as adults. And we have fully functioning, fully developed brains. And we have all of our cognitive and emotional faculties, and it's still really, really hard for us. So imagine for our kids who don't have brains that are fully developed, who don't have all the life experience and skills that we do, this is really hard for them. So pretty much overnight, their lives were abruptly changed. I'm sure you guys have all seen this with your own kids. Suddenly there's no school, there's no friends, there's no extracurricular activities, possibly not even any physical contact with extended family, especially if we have grandparents or pregnant aunts or anyone with health concerns who are quarantined. Suddenly their plans that they've been looking forward to for a very long time, whether it's parties or championships, they're now canceled or at best postponed. And now they're stuck at home all day long under the same roof with their parents. And I don't know about you guys, but this has not exactly been a very relaxing time for me either. So there's a lot of stress. I think parents are responding to this change, whether it's in their business or having kids home all day, partners being under the same roof together all day long. So there's a lot of stress that parents are in. We're busy. We're anxious and worried as well. There's not a lot of space for us to get away to deal with things, but we're still trying to be there for our kids. And then children may also be really aware of some of the financial limitations that the family is under now due to the economic crisis that this is creating. And then there's the hyper focus on health, which for some kids can be a very stressful experience. Okay, so this is a very chaotic and stressful context for our children to try to be functioning in. So let's talk about how we can help them through that. So some of the emotions that we're going to see our children experiencing in response to this abrupt change are probably a lot of the same emotions that you and I are feeling as well, but just in their age appropriate way. So we're seeing a lot of kids feeling very overwhelmed, all of this change in a short period of time. we're seeing a lot of fear. So children who are younger, so up until about 7 or 8, and then again in adolescence, are in an egocentric development stage. And what that means is that the world really revolves around them. So when they're going through something like this and they get scared, it comes back to them. How is this going to affect them? So they're going to have a lot of questions about, am I going to get sick or die? Is my family going to get sick or die? Will I ever see my friends again? And this isn't because the child is being selfish, it's just developmentally appropriate for their brain to focus on their survival. You may be seeing your child struggle a lot with anger and disappointment, again, with things getting canceled and life not being real exciting or thrilling right now. They could very much be struggling with that. I know in our household, I've heard a lot, I hate this virus. And, you know, that's very valid. Confusion for a lot of our kids. They don't understand the gravity of the situation and why all of the sudden life is pretty much on lockdown. And then of course, we're seeing a lot of our kiddos struggling with loneliness. They don't have those social outlets anymore that they really rely on day in and day out. So what can you expect with your kids as they're feeling these big emotions? The first thing that we're seeing a lot of, and I don't know if this resonates with any of you, but we're seeing a lot of decreased self-regulation. And what I mean by that is they're not really able to take care of their emotions and manage them as well as they normally would. So they're coming back to us probably a lot more for that support and for helping them through their emotions. We're also then seeing a lot of regression in their behavior. So they're no longer acting, quote unquote, their age. So your child who used to be potty trained may now not be that way. And that's a very common reaction to intense emotions and stress. So some of the things that you might be noticing in your kids right now that are very normal, typical responses to situations like this are increased tantrums and emotional meltdowns. So the bowl is blue, they want it to be green, and they're completely losing their wits about it. That is very common when stress is very high. They may be very clingy, talking back, or aggressive. You may be noticing accidents or increased bedwetting, especially in those older kiddos where that was not a problem. Now it's come back. Or changes in sleep. So you may notice that they're not able to fall asleep. They're really resistant about going to bed. They are wanting to sleep with you. They're having nightmares. So interruptions in sleep are really, really common responses to stress. We're also noticing some changes in eating habits in a lot of kids. So they're not eating as much, or they're eating a lot more than normal. Now, part of that, of course, is they're home. They might be bored. They go to the pantry a lot, but some of it could also be a stress response. You may be noticing reassurance seeking. So just a lot of coming back to you with questions of, is everything okay? Have you talked to grandma? Are you okay? Are you feeling sick? Do I have a fever? Where kids get really anxious about what's going on. For our older kids and teenagers, you may be noticing more withdrawn behavior, even more so than what was there before. So retreating into their rooms, withdrawing from the family interaction as a way to cope with this stress. So if you're noticing increase in those behaviors, any of those on the list, do not be alarmed. That's a very common response to stress, but we will talk at the end about when does this kind of cross over into something that you do want to be a bit more concerned about. But let's first talk about, how do you support your kids through this? There's a lot of tangible things that we can do to help them. I think the first thing we have to remember is we've got to give them patience. We are all doing the best that we can as parents. And sometimes that's not a super great job. I know, at least for me, sometimes I can get really stressed and overwhelmed. I don't have the emotional bandwidth to be there in the ways that I want to be there, but I'm doing the best I can. And the same is true for our kiddos. They are doing the best they can, even when they're having those meltdowns and talking back. We absolutely want to be healthy models for our children. They are watching every move we make, and they are learning from us. So the way that we handle this crisis is going to be what they internalize as their coping mechanisms for handling crises and disappointments and changes that come up in their life as they grow up into adults. So we have to be flexible and we want to stay hopeful. We don't want to be naive and Pollyannish about it, but we do want to offer our children hope that we're going to get through this, because our energy becomes their energy. So when we can be flexible and say, you know what, we're going to find a way through this. We may have to do things a little differently than we prefer. We may have to cope with some disappointment and adjust to things, but we're going to get through this and we're going to be okay. Kids need that. They also need to see us taking care of ourselves. The best way for kids to learn how to take care of themselves is to watch us do it for ourselves. So modeling those healthy behaviors where we are getting our own support, taking our own breaks, and doing what we need to do to stay well and balanced is key. At the end of the day, as parents, our job is to create resilient humans who can handle stress and change and disappointment. So this is an opportunity. It is a huge one, and a very challenging one for all of us, certainly, but this is an opportunity to teach our kids how to weather life's storms, because unfortunately, this won't be the last crisis they go through, and it certainly won't be the last time they have to be really flexible and adaptive. So we have to teach them this is a time to practice our flexibility muscles, to be creative, to come up with plan B that can be good enough for right now, and we're going to be okay with that. We want to teach them how to do that now, so that when they're adults and they're dealing with their own situations, crises, and stressors, then they will have the psychological skills to weather those storms. Okay? We know that kids need 4 things from their parents to cope with stress in a really emotionally healthy and effective way. They need safety, structure, connection, and communication. So I'm going to go through these 4 really from the vantage point as a family therapist, and what do we want to do to promote emotional strength and resilience in our kids. So the first piece is safety. And the reason I have this in here is because this is at the core of our functioning. As humans, we have to know that we are safe. If we feel like our safety is threatened, all bets are off. Our nervous system goes into fight or flight, and we're going to have a really hard time being able to regulate our emotions and use our coping skills. So the first thing we want to do is really promote a sense of safety for our kids. We want to give them reassurance that we are going to be okay. That doesn't mean everything's going to work out great or that we can predict the future, but some way, somehow, we're all going to be okay. Our family will get through this. Okay, that creates a sense of safety and comfort for a child's psyche. We also want to remind them that this is temporary. Sometimes when we're going through really hard, stressful things, we just have to walk through it and we have to tolerate the darkness and the stress, but we can do that by reminding ourselves this isn't going to last forever. We will get back to a quote unquote normal life again. I'm sure all of you have heard, to share age-appropriate material about COVID-19 with your children when they need it. I won't get into what those age-appropriate details are. You can certainly find a lot of that online, and I'll be providing you a reputable source at the end of the presentation where you can go and get that information if you don't already have it. But making sure, especially if you have kids of different ages at home, that you're really kind of tending to what information do they already know, is it accurate, and then what new information might they need to feel more at ease about how the family is navigating through this, okay? We also, of course, I'm sure you all have heard, limiting the news and the discussions at home about the virus, because as we all know, little ears hear everything. So even if we think we're being quiet on the phone as we're talking to our best friend about how stressed out we are, if the kids are around, they're probably hearing it. And remember, our energy becomes their energy. So as best we can, we want to limit that until after they're asleep, so that they're not getting exposed to that material unnecessarily. All right, once that safety has been established and we come back to safety over and over and over again with that reassurance, we then want to create a lot of structure for our children. And there's different layers to what I mean by structure. We know that kids do really well when they know what to expect, when there's some type of predictability, even if it's a day-by-day basis. So the good news here is kids don't have to have the same routine all the time. So they just need to know what to expect. So the routine might be changing right now, but so long as it's predictable, and that might even be just reviewing in the morning, this is what the day is going to look like. If you can maintain some of your pre-COVID-19 routine, that can be helpful, especially for the younger kids. And this can be as simple as bookending the day with a morning routine and an evening routine that they're used to. So when you get up, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you brush your hair, and you eat breakfast. And then at nighttime, you brush your teeth, put on pajamas, read a book, and go to bed. So it doesn't have to be a big routine, but something very simple that they already know, it's already familiar, and it gives them that sense of comfort and structure. I've had a lot of questions from clients about the daytime. What do we do with the daytime? There's a lot of helpful information online about how to create that structure. Some of you have probably already seen that. What I would say is definitely kids need some structure. We don't want them just kind of wandering through 8 hours of the day with no sense of routine, but we also want to keep it really flexible because remember, this is a very stressful time for kids. So we want to create some structure, but not have it be too rigid that then that becomes stressful for them. I've also gotten a lot of questions about, how much should I be really worrying about their academics and getting their education going because they're at home, maybe they're doing online school. How much should I be requiring the schoolwork? And, it's certainly going to vary for every family, but what I would say is, again, with this stressful time, we want to give kids the psychological and emotional space to kind of cope with this and to process all of this, which means some of their energy that they could have put into school before, right now they don't have the energy for that. So let's be flexible around those academic expectations. Of course, that's much easier for the kiddos who are younger. It's a lot harder for the kiddos who are older, where maybe they're getting ready to transition to college. They're in their, high school years, and academics matter a lot more. What you can also count on, though, is they are getting older. They're hopefully in communication with their schools and already coming up with a helpful plan to do what they need to do while still hopefully having enough time and space in their days to be able to kind of process all of the stress that's going on. There's one key piece to the structure that I think is really important for families to talk about, and I've been encouraging a lot of my family clients to discuss the balancing act of together time versus alone time. It's so interesting because as the typical American family, I think we are very busy. We don't have a ton of together time, and it's something that we often covet. And now here we are in this very strange situation where we have a ton of together family time, and we don't have that natural built-in alone time where we're leaving for the day and going to school, going to work, being away from each other, and then being able to come back together at the end of the day. So it's important that because that's not naturally built into the days now, we have to intentionally talk about it. So I'm encouraging my families to have a family meeting, talk about all of the members' needs when it comes to together time versus alone time. And what you'll probably find is the younger children are going to want a lot of together time, and the older children are probably going to be okay with more of that alone time. It's no surprise. But being able to talk that out and have everybody really articulate what their needs are can be helpful for the family to then put together a plan for how they're going to navigate that in the day. I'm encouraging families to designate a space in the home or a couple of spaces in the home where people can go if they do need that time to just kind of be alone. And so if you see someone in that space, you know that they're just looking to decompress and get away from everybody. And we really want to respect that. Again, our teenagers are probably retreating into their bedrooms and closing the door. But for people who are maybe in a smaller home, for siblings who share a room, for younger kids, designating that space and having a mutual agreed upon understanding that this space is for downtime and do not disturb them can be really, really helpful. Also, I'm encouraging families to put some activities in that space that they can do independently. So if they're younger, maybe it's a puzzle or a game or dolls or Legos. Maybe for older kids, it's going to be a Sudoku book or a book that they're reading, or even a piece of technology, but something that they can do to just kind of self-regulate, because that is a key that we're wanting to teach our children how to do. Is when you're feeling stress, the family is here to support you, but we also want to teach you how to support yourself and be able to know what to do when that stress gets high. For some families, it can also be helpful to come up with a code word. So something that we use that can be kind of silly, that says, hey, I'm getting really stressed out and I need you to kind of give me some space. You know, when we're in the heat of the moment, it can be hard, especially for kiddos, to be able to articulate that need. And so coming up with a code word, something like pineapple, for example, means, hey, mom, back off. I need some breathing room. And so that can be a really easy way for families to communicate that need without having to kind of go through all of the clunky words of I'm feeling this and I'm needing this. It's a quick way for that to happen. Okay. Let's talk about connection. We know that our kids need a lot of connection. When they're younger, they need a lot of connection with their families. As they get older, they very appropriately rely much more on their friend group for that connection. So for our teenagers, this can be a really challenging experience to not be able to go out and hang with their friends. There are a lot of creative ways, thank God for technology, right? Even right now, where we can all stay connected. So using FaceTime or Zoom to create virtual play dates. I know my daughter took my phone the other day for an hour and she FaceTimed with her best friend, and they both sat there and played Barbies together. They were in two totally different spaces, but they felt connected, and that felt really good. There's apps like Marco Polo where you can leave video messages for each other. And again, that video aspect, I think, is so important. Being able to see people's faces, look into their eyes, and feel that deeper connection than just talking on the phone. You can also support connection vis-a-vis activities. So maybe they can make cards or some type of handmade little gift and mail it to friends or family. You can even take it a step further and build upon kind of this sense of caring for the world and making some little handmade gifts to share with the senior center or with the doctors at the local hospital, so that we all feel this greater sense of connection and our kids feel like they're doing something with that emotional energy that they have. And we also have some really great virtual things happening in the community. I've seen museums take their courses online. I know the Arizona Science Center is doing some planetarium shows virtually, which is really cool. Kids can attend that. There's a lot of musicians who are offering live concerts from their homes or their studios, and you can just log on and watch them for free. So maybe some of their favorite artists they can watch. Some of the local libraries and some of the local businesses are going virtual. So these are all creative ways that we can keep our kids feeling connected, which is so important to mental health, because when that connection feels threatened and it's diminished, that sense of depression, isolation, I'm all alone can kick in. Fear can get a lot bigger in that space. And so we want to keep them connected as much as they will allow. Okay. The last piece that is so near and dear to my family therapist heart is communication. This is so imperative to healthy family functioning and to really creating a resilient child who knows what they're feeling, knows what they're needing, and can go to the family system for that support. So as parents, we want to model really healthy communication and conversation. And one of the things that I hear a lot from my clients is this fear that if they bring it up to their child, they're kind of planting the seed, or they're, reminding their child of something that maybe they hadn't really thought of or had forgotten about. And so if we don't talk about it, then it's not really there. And that can be actually really dangerous, because silence teaches our kids that this is a taboo subject, and that, maybe we as parents can't really handle the conversation. And what kids do with that, remember, from that egocentric developmental space, is they think, gosh, if mom or dad isn't talking with me about this, it must be really bad, and they must not be able to handle it. So I really can't tell them how I'm feeling, because that'll push them over the edge. So I've got to hold it all in. So we really don't want our kids holding it in. That is such kind of the antithesis to resilience and healthy mental and emotional functioning. We want our kids talking, so we have to model that by bringing up the conversations, holding that space for them, and inviting them in to share what's going on. I really encourage parents to be very direct with their children. Ask very pointed questions. It is okay, and it actually gives kids a sense of comfort and safety, going back to our first point. So you can ask things like, how are you feeling about all of this virus stuff, to use very clinical terms? How are you feeling about it? How are you feeling about not going to school anymore? How are you feeling about not seeing your friends? And invite them to talk about it. Maybe they're scared today, maybe they're angry tomorrow, and maybe the third day they're, kind of neutral to it. But you're showing them that you care enough to ask and that you can handle it. And that's so important to their mental health. We also want to encourage them to bring their questions to us and bring their concerns. So if they're worried about someone dying, we want them to talk to us about it, because again, if they don't, it's going to stay inside and get stuck inside, and it's going to come out sideways. And that's where we're going to see more and more behavior problems, acting out, depression, anxiety. We don't want those feelings to come out sideways. So we have to encourage our kids to bring them to us directly. And the way we're going to do that is with direct questions. Okay. When our kids share with us how they're feeling, if it's anything that's in kind of the painful or negative or distressed category of emotions, it's very, very normal as a parent to want to take that pain away for our kids. That's just a knee-jerk reaction we all have. So it's oftentimes what we'll say to them is, oh, don't worry about that. Don't feel that. It's going to be okay. And while we have such loving intent in telling them to not feel that, unfortunately, what it does is it invalidates the feelings that they're having. So we do want to validate whatever it is they're feeling. If they're scared, if they're angry, if they don't really care right now, we want to validate that and give them permission to feel whatever it is that they're feeling. So you can say things like, I can really understand why you feel that way. Or I remember when I was your age and I went through something hard, I felt scared too. That's normal. So we're giving them kind of this permission to just relax into whatever emotions they're having. And the beautiful thing about that is validation goes a long way in emotional processing and healing. So your child will actually process through a lot of that discomfort and distress just by knowing that you get it and they're not alone in that emotion. The last thing we want to do is try to talk them out of it. And like I said, that often comes from a very loving, well-intended place on our part, but we have to let them know that it's okay to have yucky feelings about this situation. And then once they are able to share with you how they're feeling, it's our job to kind of teach them what the heck to do with those emotions. So we want them to learn how to process through emotions, regulate themselves, and manage things in a really healthy way so that it doesn't later turn into something like depression or anxiety or an eating disorder or anything like that. We want to encourage them to express themselves. So emotions are energy. They have to come out of the body. That's why they're emotions. They need to move through the body. And the way that we can do that is verbalizing them or expressing them in some way. So I'm always encouraging kids and parents to express with verbal, with written, or with art. Part of that's going to depend on your child's temperament. Part of that will depend on their age. But really kind of finding what avenues work well for them and encouraging them to get it out. I always tell my daughter, just get it out of you, however you need to do that. You don't want to keep those feelings just kind of ricocheting around inside of you. Remind them of some pleasurable activities they can do to offset a bit of the distress. So I teach kids like it's like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. If you're sitting way down in distress, we don't want to take that away necessarily. We don't want to invalidate that, but we can balance things out by also bringing in some pleasurable activities. So it might be fun music that they're listening to, or playing a video game that they really like, or playing a game of kickball with you and their siblings, whatever it might be, finding those pleasurable activities to balance out the distress with some joy. Another great coping skill is help your kids remember past times when they were resilient, when they got through something hard. And you can find all kinds of examples that are age appropriate for your child, but remind them that they have gotten through hard things before, and you know what? They're gonna get through this hard time too. And it may not be about the same type of situation. Of course, nothing compares to this situation that we're in, but focus on the feelings that they're having and find a time in the past when they felt that way and they got through it. So if fear is something that's really dominant for them right now, think back, and you can do this together with them. Let's think back to another time when you felt really scared. Can you think of another time? And how did you handle that? Yeah, and you got through that, didn't you? We all came out of that okay. So you're reminding them and connecting them with an internal emotional resource that they are strong, that they can get through this. And again, it's building that sense of resiliency, okay? The last tip is focusing on the good that is coming from this experience. And I'm cautious to say this because as a therapist, I never want to focus on the good as a way of invalidating the tough stuff that we're going through. Both can be true at the same time. And that's what I really want us as parents to teach our kids, that yes, this is a really awful thing that we're going through. None of us would ever choose this. It's definitely not what we want to be going through. And even though there are really bad things happening right now, you know, there's some really good things that come out of it. So as you know, to draw from Mr. Rogers' sage advice, we want to look for the helpers, look for the good, look for the ways in which people are coming together and doing good things because of this, you know, yucky thing that we're going through. So we want to give our kids a healthy perspective, and you can really adapt this strategy, all of these strategies, to whatever age your child is at, and draw from their personal life experiences to help them see that they can get through these tough emotions, that there's still some good coming from this. I know with my daughter, we've been talking a lot about like, this really, really stinks. In fact, it was her birthday over the weekend, and we had this really great weekend plan. We had family flying in from out of state. We had a party with our friends planned, and everything had to be canceled. And it was a total bummer. And she really had to grieve, as did I. So we made space for all of that, but we also then were able to see some good that came out of it. And we ended up with a lot of creativity and flexibility, created a really great day together for her birthday. She felt super loved and special. And we were able to reflect at the end of the night, like, you know, that certainly wasn't what we had in mind for your birthday. And we'll never say that it was, you know, better than what we had planned, but we can acknowledge that some really cool stuff came out of it that would not have happened had we gone through with our original plan. So just making space for both to be true, the disappointment and the distress, and some of the good that's coming out of it. All right, so we talked about you know, the behaviors and the emotions that you might be seeing in your child, and what's considered normal in this time of high stress. But I think what's also on a lot of parents' minds is, when does it go from kind of a normal, healthy response to stress and bleed over into something where we should be a little bit more concerned, okay? As a mental health professional, one of the things that we watch for is significance and persistence. So we're looking at, you know, is this change something that is larger than what you would reasonably expect from this child under these circumstances? And you guys are the experts on your kids. So hopefully you feel like you have some sense of what would be considered significant. And then we're looking at persistent. And that means, you know, if it's lingering, if it's lasting for a while. Certainly, as we're kind of in the uphill trend and the peak of this crisis, you know, mood and anxiety situations are going to be high. But as things start to resolve themselves, we should see our kids really adapting and resolving as well. And that's what we're watching for. And if you don't see that, that's where you're going to want to get some help. So watching for mood and anxiety, we're certainly keeping a close watch on depression, generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. So we're looking at, you know, their mood. Are they sleeping excessively or not at all? Are they worrying and really ruminating and obsessing about things to the point where they're not really able to engage in much else throughout their day? We're looking for atypical disinterest in connecting with people. So, you know, a lot of our kids right now probably aren't wanting to jump on FaceTime all day long, and that's perfectly fine. But if there's like no interest and that's really atypical for your kid, you definitely want to watch that. As I mentioned before, eating and sleeping can always be good windows into how your child is doing. When they're eating and sleeping are fairly regulated, that can be a good indication that their emotions are fairly regulated. When emotions get dysregulated and aren't managed well, we see a lot of that show up in eating and sleeping. So watching for, again, those significant and persistent changes in how they're eating and sleeping, too much or too little. Because this is a health crisis that we're in, and we are encouraging our kids to wash their hands, you know, keep themselves away from other people, we also want to just watch for if that becomes excessive. For some kids, there's already going to be a propensity for obsessive compulsive disorder. And this type of situation can really kind of spark or accelerate that OCD type of anxiety. So if you're noticing, again, that this is significant and persistent, you might want to reach out for some more support. And then the last thing is excessive reassurance seeking and clinginess. I do not want to pathologize our kiddos who are just by our side as much as they can be right now. This is a very stressful time. But again, as things start to level off and stabilize, you want to see your child's behavior stabilize. And if that's not the case and they just refuse to kind of get back into some normalcy and appropriate distance from you, you know, to go back to school or to go play with a friend, that might be the time to seek some support. Some mental health resources that are reputable and available to you. You can always go to your child's pediatrician. They don't just do physical health. They are trained to do general mental health screening, and then they know the resources in your community to help you, so they can refer you to the right places. So you can always use them as a first line of defense. I've also included on here healthychildren.org. This is the website through the American Academy of Pediatrics that is for families. So they provide a lot of really helpful information about a lot of different issues facing kids, both physical but also mental and emotional. And you can find some really great information on there specifically about COVID-19 as well, age-appropriate ways to talk to your kids. If you feel like some professional mental health support would be helpful for you, for your family, for your child, there are a lot of different ways that you can find that right provider. So Psychology Today is probably the most popular therapist directory online. Therapists pay to be listed on there, but they're also verified by the state licensing board, so you can really trust that these are qualified providers. And the way that you can find your providers, you can search by zip code, you can search by city, you can even search by the ages that they treat, the issues that they treat. It'll list how long they've been licensed, what their rate is, if they take insurance. So I find it to be the most comprehensive directory and most helpful for people who don't even really know where to begin in finding somebody. I've listed the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy on here. So family therapists, we are trained obviously to work with parents and work with kiddos and the family system to promote that healthy communication and healthy emotional functioning. If you go to amft.org, they also have a therapist directory for all of the states, so you can find a family therapist in your area. For younger children, play therapy can be a fantastic tool where children work with a play therapist. So typically about zero, well, not zero, but maybe 1 or 2 up till about 9 or 10. It's a little different for every play therapist, but they work with kids in that age range and provide play as a therapeutic tool to help kids work through some of their emotional issues. Because we have to remember, kids don't have all of the verbal skills that we have to be able to articulate how they're feeling and what they're needing, but they can act it out through play. So it's really exciting, and a4pt.org is where you can find those play therapists. And then lastly, I've included emdria.org. EMDR is a type of therapy that can be very, very helpful when we're treating anxiety, stress, and also trauma. And for a lot of families, parents, and kids, COVID-19 is a traumatic experience. And so being sensitive to that and working with a provider who can support your child through that. EMDR can be helpful for young kids, but it's also a fantastic therapeutic tool for adolescents and adults. So those are great resources. I know a lot of providers have moved their practices to telehealth. I know our practice, all 11 of us, have gone 100% virtual for right now, just to continue to offer that support to our clients. So if you find someone in your area, ask about telehealth and virtual sessions, and you could get started right away. Okay, so here's my contact information. And then Marnie, I'm going to turn it over to you for some questions.
Thanks, Ashley. That was amazing. I think everyone will agree that that was a lot of really great information and a lot of interesting information that we may not have already seen or heard to this point. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a lot of different questions. I'm going to go through some of the ones that we saw themes of around, and you touched upon some of them in a way, but let's do a little more on them.
Sure.
What if a family member gets, or what if you know somebody who does actually get COVID, and how are you to reassure your kids but also not lying to them about information?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that I'm hearing a lot from clients right now. So I think we're walking this very fine line of, we want to reassure them of what we know to be true. And if we know that our family is safe right now, we can definitely reassure them of that. But again, kind of coming back to this theme of resiliency, I think the goal is not for our children to know that there's nothing bad coming, because that's really not how life works. There's always, things coming at us that are hard or painful or tragic. And so I think, again, we want to shore our kids up to be able to handle this. So we can say, how are you feeling about Aunt Susie getting COVID-19? It is really scary. Let's talk about what our family is doing to stay as safe as we can. And remember, we're all going through this together, and we're going to get through this together. So again, we're reminding them that it's not so much that we can control what's happening around us, but we can stay together and do everything that we can to take care of ourselves. And I think that's being truthful for our kids. And sometimes as parents, our task is to sit with our own discomfort and knowing that our kids are a bit uncomfortable. The reality of COVID-19 is this is very stressful, and it's a very real danger for a lot of people right now. So, we don't want to sugarcoat. We obviously don't want to terrify our kids either. So, we want to encourage them to talk about how they're feeling. We want to validate those feelings. And then we want to focus on the things that we are doing to promote the greatest chance of successfully coming out of this, not only together, but healthy and well.
Great. Okay, question. If you have an emotional response breakdown, meltdown as a parent in front of your
Yes.
kids, how do you circle back on that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely had the meltdown in front of my kid. I think a lot of us as parents have. This is such a unique situation for parents because we really don't have the space to process a lot of what we're even going through. And when I say space, I mean physical space and psychological space, right? When we're all under one roof all day long together, we we're not really getting that break that maybe we might get if we were back in our usual routine, where we have a little bit of time and space to ourselves, even if it's on the drive to pick up our kids from school, to be able to process what's going on for ourselves. I think right now we're so busy taking care of them, making sure their needs are met, maybe handling stuff with our businesses and our work, maybe helping our partners, our extended family with things. So it's tricky. It is okay to have a meltdown in front of your kids. I want to validate that. We have to teach our kids how to go through a meltdown in a healthy way. And the only way they're going to learn that is if they watch us do it. So it's okay to have the meltdown. Some meltdowns are just going to be you kind of crying and processing your emotions. Sometimes the meltdowns are going to look like getting mad at your kids and maybe saying things or doing things that you regret or feel bad about. But here's the thing, we don't have to shield our kids from all of those emotions, but we have to help them understand them. So if that happens, or maybe I should say when that happens, just to normalize that we're all struggling with this, we want to circle back to our kids and we want to process through it with them. So again, you're going to hear me repeating myself. Ask them how it made them feel to watch you have those emotions. How did they feel when you accidentally kind of lashed out at them a little bit, or got impatient with them, or just couldn't answer their question right then? Validate how they feel. Share with them, that you're sorry that that happened. You can see that that was really hard for them. You can even share a little bit of age-appropriate information about like what you're going through. Again, I'm cautious to say that. We want to be just a little bit so that they can appreciate that we're human, but we certainly don't want to burden them with the sense that, they have to take care of us or they should feel bad for being upset about our reaction. But we're modeling for them, when you feel something distressing and it comes out sideways, you circle back with that person, you process how it made them feel, you validate, you apologize, and you know what? Kids are really forgiving. They don't need perfect parents, they need present parents. So there are going to be times where it's hard to be totally present because you've got a bazillion other things on your mind. Circle back, check that out with them. I think you'll find that they're really quite flexible with us.
Great. Okay, another question. How do you manage it when you start to see your kids self-isolating? I know we touched
Yeah.
a little bit upon this in the presentation, but I saw this as a theme in the question, so a little bit more about how to work with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think, again, we're walking a fine line here, and this answer is probably going to vary a bit based on your child's age. With teenagers, there's already a propensity for some isolation, and we're probably going to see that increase a bit in a lot of the teenagers right now. But in general, I would say we want to give as much space to our kiddos as they're wanting and needing. However, if it starts to feel really concerning, like if they're not coming out of their room to eat in the day, if they're not showering for days on end, if they seem, significantly mopey or down or negative or cynical, more so than you would kind of expect for this situation. Again, I think, we want to try to talk to them if they will allow that. With teenagers, you never know what you're going to get. But I think right now we've got to give them some grace and let them process this in the way that they're processing it, and trust that, if we give them some space, they will take what they need and hopefully circle back. If they don't, you want to try to talk to them about your concerns and ask them if there's anything that you can do to support them right now. So we don't want to go in and be critical and, why are you always in your room? You need to get out here. You need to be with the family. That's probably going to close them up. They're going to dig their heels in even more, maybe feel really bad within themselves, even if they don't show that to you. So again, try to approach them with some softness and some space and say, hey, I've noticed you've been in your room a lot more. You seem really unplugged from the family. I'm just wondering what that's about. Is there anything on your mind? Is there anything that I can do to support you and maybe feeling a little more comfortable or a little more connected with us? You may be surprised. There may be something that they would like to do that they just haven't expressed yet. So try to have those conversations, and you probably have to circle around it several times. Kids typically don't just lay it all out there the first time, especially as they get older. So, be persistent. I always tell my parents, I would rather you over communicate and over check things out with your kids than do too little of it. So if your kid starts rolling their eyes at you like, yes, I know, you care how I feel, that's great. I feel like I've done my job. I want them to be bugged by the fact that I am paying attention. I do love you enough to ask and to keep coming back in and circling around and checking this out.
One more question, and then I'm going to do a few closing remarks. We talked a lot about how you manage this for a family. What about if you start feeling anxiety in yourself, and how to manage that so that it doesn't spill over into the family?
Yeah, again, another really good question. And I think something probably all of us parents can relate to. Everything that I've been talking about for our kids is something that we have to make sure we're doing for ourselves. And I think particularly right now, we hear all the time about self-care and making sure that you're filling your cup before trying to fill theirs. Sometimes people use the analogy of when you're flying on an airplane, if the oxygen masks fall down, the instruction is put your mask on first before helping your child, because you're really no help to anyone if you're not able to breathe on your own first. So, making sure that you are doing the same things for yourself that you're wanting your child to be doing. If you're wanting them to regulate their emotions, are you able to regulate yours? If you're wanting them to talk to you about how they're feeling, who are you talking to about how you're feeling? I think for a lot of parents, especially moms, and there are lots of dads out there who do this too, but I think for a lot of us, we kind of take the whole weight of the world onto our shoulders and we try to do it all, and we do a darn good job of it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't times where we need to fall apart and we need to take from a relationship and be supported and just held and reassured. So knowing when your cup is overflowing and you need some extra support, whether that's turning to your partner, turning to a family member or a friend, making sure that you're getting that support. I think right now we have to be kind of creative about that, because we're walking this fine line of, venting and getting the support that we need, but not exposing our kids to that, who are around us pretty much 24/7. So I've been using a lot of texting with friends and family to talk about all of this stuff and vent and support and express concerns, because that's a silent way that my daughter has no idea that that's happening. We can also wait until after bedtime or get up early and talk then, or sometimes go sit in the car or go for a walk around the neighborhood if you have the luxury of another adult being home, so that you can get a little bit of private time, even to be with yourself, and or to connect with someone that can support you, because we absolutely cannot be going through a stressful time like this by ourselves, and not just physically by ourselves, but emotionally and psychologically. So let's make a commitment to each other as parents that we are doing for ourselves the very same things we're asking our kids to do. We have to model resilience, and we have to model not just self-care, but healthy emotional regulation. That's going to be the best way for our kids to grow up into healthy adults who can handle crises and stressors like COVID-19.
I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Ashley. That was amazing.
Thank you so much.
I hope you got a lot of good information out of today's session. I know I did. Please share the presentation with friends who are unable to join us live. To stay up to date with iGen Parenting, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram.